Hey everyone, so today I'm going to be building this React app, but I'm not going to be doing it with my usual IDE or code editor. I'm going to be using this futuristic cool editor, also known as a visual IDE. This visual IDE is called Codex and is currently in its beta stage. So yes, this is an IDE. It has all your code in here, but with the added benefit of seeing the component in the IDE as well, and adjusting values with these visual toggles and inputs also. So pretty cool. I'm excited to use this new piece of technology to build a weather app that will get you the freshest data based on the location of your laptop or desktop or any other machine you're coding on. We are going to have data feeding into these cards that we make using the visual IDE as well as other components to produce a working final product that we can then deploy or do whatever with if we wish. So what are we waiting for? Let's do it. So this is what the IDE looks like. All you have to do is just download it onto your computer, okay? You will be able to make new projects or open local projects that you made previously. So essentially open up code bases and see it kind of in a more visual way. So just go ahead and download Codex here, kind of like downloading VS Code or WebStorm. It's exactly the same. That's all we're doing. And then once you have downloaded it and you're at this stage, we're going to start a new project. So all I'm going to do is click here and we're going to use the Create React App template. Okay, so it's just like any IDE or code editor. And I'm just going to call this React Weather Application. And then I'm just going to create that. Make sure to save it in wherever you want to save it. So just on your computer, I've gone ahead and saved it in a folder called development. So there we go. That is where it's being saved, and just hit create. So that is now creating my React weather application. Okay. Kind of like you would create React app, and need to spin up all the correct files that we're going to need for the project, as well as all the correct configuration, all the right NPM packages, and so on. So great, we're going to run that script. So that is now installing. And then once it is done, we can close this. So there we go. And essentially you'll see all the components showing up. As with Create React App, it starts off with just one component, which is the app component. So we can click into that in order to see it. And of course, I kind of want to start fresh. You can see the code for this component down here. Okay. So if you click here and then edit it, you will see all the things that make that up. So we have the header, we have an image, we have a P element, which is that, and then we have the link. So I'm going to go ahead and just delete all of this because I want to essentially start fresh. I'm just going to keep the div with the class name of app and just delete all the rest. So there we go. Let's carry on. So first off, I'm just going to style the div itself. So just click on the div with the class name of app. And then if you want to style it, you just click on here. And all I'm going to do is just assign it or hard code a width and a height. So I'm going to go with 390 pixels and the height of this is going to be 844 pixels. Okay, so that is hard coded. I'm just going to zoom out so we can see this a little bit better as I am very zoomed in. And there we go. Now we can also round off the edges. So for example, if we go to border and corners, I can round this off. So maybe let's put 30 pixels and that will be applied. And if you just want to apply it to one, you can unlock this here. But for now, that's being applied to all the corners of my app. And let's also give it a color. So I want to add a color. However, I want this to be a gradient. And then I can select, if I want this to be a radial gradient, I would just go here and I can use the color picker, or I can paste in a hex code value that I know I want to use for both of these. So that's what I am doing. And then of course I can replace it here. So once again, let's do hex code and there we go. And I believe I can also drag the focal point, which is pretty cool. I'm really happy with this. So that is a cool feature that I really like, and we can then add it. So there we go. We have now applied a radial gradient to this. Okay, so this is all being saved to the element with the class name of app. The other thing I'm going to do is just make sure that any text we put in here is centered. So let's go ahead and find that in here, text align center, that is already there. Now, instead of scrolling through all of this, you can also search for a specific controller in the style panel just by using the search input to make finding things a bit quicker. Great. So that is essentially my app. You know, if you don't want to view this, you can just dismiss that. And now I can scale it to fit. And there we go. And then I can, make this a little bit better bigger so we can fit the whole thing in so I can see it properly. So once again, let's scale to fit. Okay. And there we have it. Now, what is my app going to need? Well, I want to have a few things in my app. Mostly I want a header to hold my logo, then perhaps a nav, and then a main card, and then some cards and a footer. So let's go ahead and create that. I'm going to add a custom component. So let's add a new component here. Let's call this header. You will also notice the template drop down. This template feature will allow you to actually create whatever component structure for yourself to reuse later on when creating new components. So that is just something to keep aware of as well. Okay, and I'm just going to create that. So there is our header element. At the moment, it doesn't have much. It just has the word header. Let's go ahead and create some more. So you will see that there. I'm going to also create a nav. So let's create that. And also create a main card component as well as a card component. You will see how that's populating all my components right here, and one more, and that is a footer component. Okay, so now in this project, we have essentially 6 components to work with, right? And if I want to put them all in the app, well, all I would do is just go add, and then I would essentially grab that, and I'm just going to put it on like so. So you will see it's nested, right? It's nested in the app. Let's also go ahead and put that nav in. So I'm going to drag it in. This is super easy. And then I'm going to put the main card, and then I'm going to put cards. We're going to map onto those cards, and then I'm going to put a footer. So I'm going to map out the data onto the cards as well as the main card and, populate the other components. But first, now that we have all of these components made, and you can actually look at the code, if I just select that here and then look at the app TS file, you will see all those components, okay? So there we go. We're also using TypeScript in this project, as you can see, TSX. So if you open up the files on your computer, it will all be kind of TypeScript files. So that's what we are working with. So that is quite cool. So there they all are. Now, you'll already see the header TSX file open here. So this is the code that makes up the header TSX file. And other ways of navigating in here are, well, you can just double click on one of these, and that will take you to the root div of that element. So the wrapping div, and then it will pop up here, or you can navigate through these. So you can just click back into the app, and then let's go ahead and click into the nav, and that will give you the code for the nav of essentially the wrapping div along with all of the other divs. So that is all that is happening here. Of course, there's no functionality. This is just visual. We'll be adding the functionality in later. But that is just something that you should know about navigating in this IDE. There's many ways to do it. So you can either, go back and forth in here. So for example, like this, or you can go into them like that, so into each individual element and all the things that make it up. I would also like to add that it's possible to drill in by double clicking on a component on stage, and to drill out by double clicking anywhere outside the currently selected component. So great, now that we have done that, let's carry on. Now I have decided that I'm not going to have a nav element, so to delete this, all I would do is Control left click and delete element. So that is now gone from here. However, if you open this up, you will see that's still in here if you want to then add it back. Okay, great. Now, let's go ahead and continue styling this up. So my header, what do I want my header to have? I'm just going to zoom in a bit for you so we can see it a little bit better. And then let's go into this component. Now the header, I don't actually want this text, or actually I do, so I'm just going to double click on it, and instead of having the text, I'm going to put a text symbol that I have found on the internet. If you want to find it, you can go to this URL, as this is where I have found it. So it's the Unicode character that looks like this. Okay, it's actually a Japanese industrial standard symbol, but I'm just taking it as my logo. I actually didn't know it meant that, but I thought it looked quite cool. So great. Of course, you can replace it with whatever you want. This is just for my tutorial. So there we go. And if I now want to edit this text, as in like style it up, I can click here. So to give this text element some styling, I'm going to have to essentially put it in an actual element. So let's go typography. I'm going to use the, let's use H1, even though we probably shouldn't actually. I'm just going to go ahead and put it in maybe like an H2. Let's go ahead and use the H1 heading, as it is going to be the most important thing on the document, and just drag it in. So now that is an H1 heading, and now I can actually just paste that in like so. And now actually what I should do is just double click on here and take this text and put it in here, okay? Because by doing this, by putting the text in an element, we can now style this element. So if you click on here and click on the styling, and we can apply a class so that it only affects this H1 element. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm gonna create a class called logo text and create the class. Okay, so I'm gonna create that, and automatically it has been put in a specific file for me. We can change that, but I just went with the default. The style sheet is going to be just for the header component. Now this logo text, what do I want to do? Well, I would like to change its color. Okay, so I'm going to change its color and also do text align to the left. So the color that I'm going to give it is kind of like an off-white. Okay, so we're going to go FDD, FDD, FDD. I'm just going to save that because I want to remember that. So there is our logo, right? And now I can delete this. So let's delete that element. There is our logo. Other things we can do is just give the H1 element, so this right here, some padding to space it out. So here is padding. It's all locked at the moment. I'm going to pad it out by 20. Okay, and then if you want to have different paddings, we can, so unlock that, make sure that it's unlocked, and change this to 30, and it will just be a bit more spaced out. Great. Another thing I want to do is just add a border line to the bottom. So where is my borders? Here it is. I'm going to unlock this as well, make this bottom border 1 pixel in width, and change the color to be the same color we just did. So FD, FD, FD. Wonderful. So that is our header pretty much done. Okay, that's all I'm going to do for now, and let's carry on. The next thing I want to do, well, let's style the footer. So I'm going to go back to the app. I'm going to grab the footer, and let's do it. So I'm just going to open it up again. You will see that text show up. So I'm going to delete that element. And in my footer, I'm actually going to put more text symbols. So once again, I'm going to just add some text. So let's make it H2 this time, as it's less important semantically. So I'm just going to drag that in like so. And in fact, I'm going to drag 3 in. So 1, 2, 3, making sure they're all at the same level, right? We don't want H elements nested in others. So just drag it out. Okay. This should mean that they're now on the same level. If you collapse them all, you should have this. Great. So now I'm going to replace this with another text symbol. So again, this is just an arrow that I found on the internet. If you want to find it, you can take it from here. So this is the URL, and this is the Unicode character that I'm going to be using. And I'm just going to paste it in like so, so there's an arrow. Same for this one. It's one that I found on the internet. And if you wanted to use the same one, please go ahead and visit here. You can get it from the sun emoji. So I'm just going to copy this. This is the URL that I I'm using to get this from, and I'm just going to once again replace it. And finally, we just need one more arrow. So this is probably going to come from the same website that we used before. So if you want to use this arrow, just go to compart.com and then follow this URL, and then you could just copy this and then you can use it. So there we go. Let's just replace that text. Okay, so again, you'll notice these are all in H2 elements. And now let's actually style this up so they are next to each other and not stacks on top of each other. So just click on the div root of where they are all contained. And to do this, they are H2 elements, but perhaps I'm going to use display flex. So let's initialize flexbox. Okay, so now they are next to each other, and now let's center it. So let's just make sure that the flex direction is horizontal, and now I need to align them. So this should be justify content center, but of course we need to give this a width for that to work. So now let's find the width of this element, and I'm just going to do 100%. Okay, so that is 100 pixels. We want to change this to percent, and now let's scroll back up, justify in the center, and then justify center as well. So perhaps it's this one we need to do, not this one. There we go. Justify center. Great. The next thing we want to do is just change the text color to be white, and maybe we want it a little bit bigger. So I'm going to add a class name that's going to affect all of these elements. So let's go ahead and create a class. I'm going to do footer text create. And now I'm going to change the color of this element. So I'm going to go scroll all the way down to here. And then it's going to be hash FD, 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 as that is the color that I am using. And maybe let's make it a little bit bigger. So let's change the font size. I don't know, what do we want to do? Like 30. Or smaller, whatever you're more comfortable with really, but I think 30 is quite good. So great, we've added that. Now I'm going to add the same class name to all the rest of these. So it's in the root, so it is footer text, and let's do the same for this one. So now I'm going to also add a class to this, make sure to select the element and not the text, and apply a class, and just scroll down to the one we made, which is footer text, and that will be applied. One thing we should probably also do is pad this out. So once again, I'm just going to click on styles, click on this style, and let's style it up. So select this, and now let's find padding. And I'm just going to pad it out. Maybe let's go with 10 pixels, or you can go smaller. It's up to you, but I like the way that this is looking. Okay, and I think that's it. I'm happy with that. Let's go back to our app. Great. Now let's go ahead and create the cards. I think I want to do that next. So on here, I'm just going to create a card. So we're going to edit this, and my card, which is currently this, I don't want this text, so I'm going to delete that element. I am going to style the root of this, however. So let's get up this again, making sure you're just selecting on here. Let's find the width of this. The width of this, I'm going to give 100 pixels. And then the height, well, it's going to be auto. So I'm just going to, for now, I'll put 300, but or maybe that's too big. Let's go 100, but we will be replacing that. Let's also give it a border radius. So let's find it here. I'm going to go with 20. Oops, that's not border radius, that's border. Corners, 20. And now we just need to add a box shadow. So where is the shadow? I'm going to add this. Let's blur it out maybe a little bit. And then also, I think that should be fine. We can also change the cursor, and I want this to be a pointer, or you can have whatever you wish. Okay, great. Now while we're here, I also want to change the margin and padding, as we are going to be adding stuff in here. So I don't want it to go all the way up to the corner, so I'm going to put 10, and margin I'm also going to put 10, so we can space all of these out. Wonderful. Now in this, I'm going to put in some other elements. It's going to be a P element. So let's drag that in like so. So there it is. Still not loving it. And still, I think the border radius is just a bit small. Let's go with corners 20. Yep, that is better. And I think we might have added a border. Okay, that's it. Let's just delete that. Okay, so let's see what that looks like. That is now looking better. So now let's have a look. So in the app, it will look like that. I'm going to actually change the background color of the card as well. So let's go back into the card. See that you can play around with this forever, really. Let's get the div root. Let's go to the styling, and now let's add a background color to this. So here's the background. I'm going to go with, you can also do RGB colors. So you can do A for transparent. And if I go 255, 255, 255, 0.1, it's essentially going to add a kind of transparent white to it with 0.1 opacity, right? So that is what it's going to look like. So now, if you look in here, that is what my card looks like. I think that is better. I'm more happy with that. So in fact, let's go ahead and duplicate it just so we can see what it looks like for now. We're going to be mapping onto here, but for now it looks like this. And we want them to essentially look next to each other, right? Rather than kind of stacked on top of each other, which is why I'm going to put them in a div that I'm going to give the class name of card container. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to create just a basic div and drag that in like so. And I'm going to apply a class. Let's create a new class. I'm going to call this card container, just like so. And I'm going to add that. And I'm going to drag that here. And I'm going to add these 3 cards into it like so. So just drag them in again. Okay, nest them in here. And now on this div container, I'm going to use Flexbox. So here we go. Flexbox horizontal, and then we can do justify content center as well. So justify center. Great. Another thing I'm going to do to this card container is just maybe give it a padding so that it's not so shoved up to the sides. So once again, let's just go ahead and maybe give it a padding of 10. So that is what my cards are going to look like right now. Great. Let's go back to styling the cards. So on the card itself, I'm going to edit it. We've got the P element. This is going to take essentially the date. So I'm just going to put date here for now. Then we're going to have an image. So let's go ahead and click on here and add an image. So I'm just going to drag that over, making sure it's on the same level as the P element, so not inside of it. So just drag it out like so. And now I'm going to just shift it over. So it really is that easy. We're just dragging and dropping this image. Well, actually, let's give this a class name as it's very big right now. So I'm going to create a new class, and this is going to be card image. Let's create that. And I just want to make sure that the width is going to be 100% of the parent, so 100%. So there we go. And finally, or is that it? No, we also need a place to show the temperature and then what kind of weather it is. So I'm going to go ahead and add those 2 in. So let's add an let's go with H2 element. It's going to make that a bit smaller. And then another P element, which is going to show us the actual day weather. So if it's cloudy or sunny. So let's replace that. I'm just going to click onto here, and this essentially is going to say sunny, or not depending on what it is. And this is just going to be like 23, and then I'm just going to do degrees Celsius. So let's just do degrees Celsius like that. Okay. So that is stuff that we're going to feed in. And now I'm just going to actually style this P element because I don't want it to be this big. I don't want all that padding and spacing around it. So I'm just going to go with creating a class. I'm going to do card paragraph and create. And then I'm going to just do, well, we can do maybe like 1 margin. I think that could be good. Great. And now let's do the same for this. Actually, let's apply the same class name to this element here. So let's apply a class, and it's going to be card paragraph, and that will be applied. And now if we select on here, well, we can just assign it the same class, or we can make a new one if we wish. So let's maybe create a new one, as I want the padding to be slightly different. So card heading, create, and for this one, let's make the padding or margin, it's up to you really. Maybe let's make it A2. Okay, so I think that looks good. Great, and now that means that we don't need to hard code the height for this element anymore. I'm just going to minimize all this and click on here, and let's find the height to this, and I'm just gonna go with auto. So that will kind of change depending on what we have in here. Wonderful. One other thing I should have done, however, is made this text white. So let's go ahead and grab this element again, and we're just going to do FD, FD, FD again, right? So hash FD, 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 and do the same for this one too. So make sure it's on the actual element itself, and then that means we can go down here, and the color of this, we can do hash FD, FD, FD. Wonderful. So that's looking good. Let's do the main card next. So let's go back to the app, and now let's click on the main card, and let's open it up so we can edit it. Okay, so once again, let's delete this unnecessary text, and on the div root itself, well, let's just select it first and add what we need. We're gonna have an image, so let's go to basic and let's drag through an image. Again, I'm gonna add a class name to this, so just click here, let's create a class. I'm gonna call this main image, create, and for the width, we just wanna make sure that it's 100%, okay, for now, of the parent element. And I think for now we can just carry on. Let's just stick in whatever else we need. I'm going to add an H2 element. So let's go ahead and put an H2 element in here. And this is going to say, well, we could just hard code today really, as we'll always show today. Let's also style it up. So let's make a style for this. Make sure you're on the element, create a class, and then all I'm going to do is put main heading, create, and then once again, I'm just going to change the font color. So let's do it here, FD, FD, FD. And I think that's it, but we'll find out soon enough. So we've got the H2. Next, I'm going to put a P element. So let's go ahead and make sure we're on the root and add a P element right here. Okay, and this is going to show today's temperature. So again, let's create a class. I'm going to go with main temp, create. Let's scroll down. I'm going to change the font color, FD, FD, FD. And then I'm actually going to change the margin and padding. So that was up here, I believe. Margin, I'm just going to make it maybe like a 3. And for this one, so make sure you're on the heading. I'm also going to change it. Maybe let's make it like a 4. Okay, so this is looking great. So now I believe we have everything we need. It's now time to start feeding in the data. So let's do it. At the moment, we've just been working with visual things, but I'm going to show you how to get data from this API. Okay, so this one right here, that is the URL that you need to go to. And the URL, I'm going to already have constructed it for you, but essentially you can construct it reading this documentation. Okay, in fact, what we're actually just going to do is let's take this one right here and we're going to adjust it. So copy that, and then back in Codex. So let's get up Codex on the app itself. So just make sure you're on the app. Let's get up the code for it. So perhaps we can just make this a bit bigger for now, as we're going to be making some requests in here. So for this to work, we're going to have to import use state and use effect. So import use state and use effect from React, which we already have installed, as this is a React app. So just make sure to do that. Oops, I don't know why I wrote that out. It should just be a comma. And now we're going to essentially write a function called fetch data. So that's what we're going to do, just like so. And we're going to try and we're going to catch any errors. So you can do it whatever way you want. This is just the way that I'm going to do it for today, console error. This is going to be an async function as we're going to use the await keyword. So await fetch. I'm going to fetch this URL. Let's make this a bit smaller. And we're just going to change a few things. So bin API longitude, we're going to have to replace with an actual longitude. So longitude, which we're going to get from our browsers. So make sure that is a $, and make sure to use backticks instead of quote marks. Otherwise that code will not be picked up. And the same for the latitude. So just delete that. And then we're going to do $, and we're going to pass through the word longitude. So just like that. Oh, sorry, latitude. This should be latitude. If I can only spell correctly. Longitude, latitude. Now, the product for this is going to not be Astro. It's going to be the one that will give us the last 7 days, which is civil light. Okay. And output is going to be JSON. Okay, so just make sure that is the same as me. Maybe let's make this a bit bigger because I want to be able to show you what I'm writing properly. So let's maybe, there we go. That's what the whole thing is. So now that we have that, of course, we're going to have to save this as a response. And then we're going to have to get it JSON. So we are working with JSON. So we're going to get the response JSON, but JSON is a async method. So we need to await it. Okay. And then save this as the const data. Okay. So this should give us the, essentially the last 7 days of weather. However, we do need to get that longitude and latitude first. So that is one function. And what should we save the return of this as? Well, I think we should just save it as data, right? So let's do const data, set data equals use state. And for now, we're going to have an empty array. Okay, and then we can use set data to change it from an empty array to an array of weather. But first, let's get the longitude and latitude, like I said. So let's do that here. I'm going to do const get location equals. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to say if there isn't, a way to get the location. So if we're going to use the navigator from it's a JavaScript API, geolocation. If that does not exist, I'm just going to console log location API is not supported by your browser, just so that you know, right? And you can inspect and understand what is going on. So that's more like for developers, really. Else, navigator, geolocation, get current position, and then we're gonna get the position. So essentially this is if you've allowed geolocation on your laptop, right? And then we're going to set location. We're going to get the location and set it in our project. So set location, and we're going to get the position coords. So that is going to come back with an object, and we just want to get the coords from it. So now set location. Well, obviously we have to save this up here. So const location set location equals use state. We're going to start off with it being null. Okay, great. So that's what we are doing. So then once we have the position coords, in fact, I'm just going to open up some curly braces and put this on a new line. Then I also want to set error. So this is in case there's any errors. I just want to put sorry, we cannot find your location, if that does not work. Sorry, just console log this out. Console log, just so that you know a location could not have been found. Wonderful. So that is looking good. Now, I'm just going to cite the type any to this just because I'm actually not sure what else is going to come back with that object. So that is good. This, however, though, I am going to be more strict with. So first off, maybe let's console log the data once we fetch that data. But first, let's actually define longitude and latitude. So I'm going to do const longitude equals, and then if location exists, right? So if we've loaded, if this has worked successfully and location exists because we set location here with some coords, I'm going to get that object and get its latitude from the coords. And the same for the longitude. So const longitude equals location, if it exists, longitude. Okay, so now we have something to pass through. Whoops, why did I do that? Let's get latitude here. So now we've defined these two and we're passing them through into the API to get the weather for wherever we are. So now in my use effect, I'm just going to get location, so call that, and also fetch the data. Okay, and as dependencies, I'm just going to pass you an empty array, so no dependencies for that. Great. Maybe let's just make sure this is all kind of more consistent. Cool. Okay, so now let's check this work. I'm going to console log data so that we can see it. All you're going to do is go to the log, and then here you will see that data. So this is what we're going to need. We're going to need the data series from that object, which is an array of 7 days starting from today. So in the code, all we're going to do is really get that JSON, right? Save it to data and then get the data because that's an object data series. And that's what we're going to save as data. So now you will see that that's an array instead. So it's an array of an object that looks like this essentially. So now we can write a interface for this. So just up here, let's define that interface. I'm going to call it day, and it's going to look like this. Okay, so interface. And now we don't need that comma. Let's tab this out. The date, well, as we can see, this is going to be a number. Weather is going to be a string. Temp to M is an object that has a max, which is a number, and a min, which is a number. And then also we have this wind thing that you can use if you want, but let's just go ahead and change this to be a number type, this to be a number type, and this to be a number type. So that is a TypeScript interface, and it just means that we can say that the data, well, it needs to be a day, and more specifically an array of days. So an array of objects that look like this. Great. So that is us being essentially just super strict. So cool. Location API is not supported by browser. Sorry, we cannot find your location. So we are now setting that data. That is great. But what do we want to do with that data? Well, we want to essentially map it out. So what I'm going to do is pass it through into some components, right? What I'm going to do for the main card, well, we just need to pass through the temp really, which is going to be if data exists. We're going to use slice to get that first item, and then we're going to go into that array because we've just essentially, you know, sliced the array to be one item, so we need to go in it, and then we're going to get the temp to M max, and that's all we're going to pass through as the temperature into the main card. Temp to M. Next, we're going to grab the image. And the image, well, let's leave the image for now. Let's just pass through the temp. So on the main card, along with the class name as the props, I want to pass through the temp. And what is the temp? Well, the temp is going to be a number, right? So we could just pass through number as the type. Great. So that means that instead of having this right here, I can just pass through the temp. And then we can also add this degrees Celsius just like so on the temp. Okay, so now if we actually, let's look at this, right? So how am I going to show you? I'm just going to minimize this. You will see that's being fed through. So let's do the same for the mini cards next. So back on the app, what do we want to pass through? Well, what I'm going to do is, instead of, just hard coding these 3 cards, I'm going to get the data, and if it exists, I'm going to slice. And I'm literally just going to take the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. So I'm going to slice like this to do that. And I'm going to map out this array onto the card. Okay, so there we go. And what am I going to map? Well, I'm going to get the day. So that's what I've chosen to define as one item in that array. And I'm also going to get the index for the key. So that's what I'm going to do. And then on the card itself, well, the key is going to be the index. And then I'm just going to pass through the whole day. So there we go. So now passing through all of that day into the card, which means that on here, I'm going to put day, and then also pass through day in here. And actually what we can do, you can reuse this, by creating a new file, but I'm not going to do it for this tutorial. So I'm just going to paste that interface up here. I'm not sure why we're exporting it. We don't actually need to export that. And now I'm going to use this interface to define my object here that I'm passing through. So now on the card, instead of hard coding this number, I can get the day temp to M max, so maximum temperature, and I can also, from the object, so the object is called day, get the weather description. Okay, so once again, that's what I have done. It's clear, cloudy, and cloudy. So that is obviously tomorrow, day after, and day after that. Great. We also want to get the date, but at the moment it is like a weird number, right? That looks like this. So we're going to have to split this out. We're going to have to get the year, the month, and the day. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to do that on the card, as that's where we need it. So we can do it here. So all I'm going to do is essentially define date, which is day, date, and then I'm going to actually do to string, because we need to make it a string. So from that, I'm going to get the year, right? So that means I can get date and use slice once more to get the first 4 digits, so 04. And actually, maybe let's make this a number again, so that we can work with it, because we can't use slice on numbers, I believe. And now we need month. So once again, let's get date, use slice. I'm going to slice the next letters to get the month. We are changing this once again to a string, as I don't believe we can use slice on numbers, but now we need to actually turn it back into a number. So that's the month. And now let's get the I guess day of the month, right? So today is the 15th, so we need to get that. And once again, well, I'm just going to pass this through number. We already know that. Date, slice, and we're going to get the last 2 numbers. Okay, great. So now that we've done that, I can essentially use the new date object to pass this through. I'm going to pass through the year, the month, -1, right, as we start counting from index 0, and then I'm going to pass through the day of the month. So once we have that, we need to change this to a date string, and that will essentially give me like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday, but I just want the first 3 of that, so I'm going to pass through 03. So it says Mon, Tues, Weds instead of the full thing. Now I'm going to say this as formatted date, formatted date. And I'm just going to pass it through right here. So there we go. So now if we have a look in here, ta-da, Sun, Mon, Tuesday, which is right, because today for me is a Saturday. Cool. So we're doing that. One last thing to do, and that is get the images. So let's do it. So back on here, I'm going to essentially use this weather description. So like, you know, we see here, we see the cloudy, we see the clear, and so on. And I'm going to write a switch case to show a specific image if we hit a certain word. And if not, we're just going to have a default image because I think there's quite a lot in there. So maybe let's do this down here. I'm going to do const get image equals. And then what I'm going to do is actually pass through, you know, the string, so cloudy, sunny, whatever. And we're going to pass it through a switch case. So we're going to pass that in. So passing through that string, and if the case is sun, then the image that we want to show is going to be something, right? And then we're going to break out of this. However, if the case is, let's go with cloudy, then we're going to show another image. Or if the case is, whoops, we don't need these here, sorry. Let's go with rain, then it's another image. Let's also have storm. So we're really like accounting for most of these. And then we're also going to have a default. So we're going to have a default image because, like I said, we are not likely to cover all of them. So we're going to start with image just being empty, so like nothing. And we're going to return the image at the end once all of this has run. So return image. And of course, as the default, we're just going to assign another image. So cool, that's what we're going to do. Now I'm going to show you where you can find some images. I just put them on my Imager so you can take them too. So we're going to go to Imager, and I've made a public post of some things that you can have. So it's under weather. And now you're just going to copy some of these. So I'm going to copy this image address, copy image address. So what would that be? I guess that would be cloudy, right? So save that. This is copy image address. I guess rain, maybe storm, or maybe that's cloudy. Let's go with this one as being cloudy. We'll make this a sun. I don't know, whatever you want. Okay. This is a storm. Oh, that's the sun. Okay. Copy image address. This is definitely a storm. This, let's go with this being rainy. Let's go with this one being cloudy. And then this is obviously just sunny. So copy image address, sun. And then as a default, I think we should just have sun, right? Because we're optimistic people. So let's try it out. So this means I can use this image getting function, and I'm going to pass it through into the main card. So I'm going to get image, and I'm going to pass through, if data exists, I'm going to essentially slice the first one off again. So I'm just going to copy that, and I am going to this time get the weather, so the kind of string that describes what weather it is. So now on the main card, we need to also pass through the image URL essentially, and this is going to be a string. But now we can essentially just show that here, so I'm just going to pass through the image. Okay, we need to also say that this could be undefined. And whoops, this should be equals is, because we are reassigning image. So that is my bad. Okay, because we are reassigning to this and then returning that. And just get rid of that as well. So now let's have a look. Ta-da! Today is sunny. So that is looking good. And out of interest, what was the first day? Well, it has weather clear, and as a default, clear is a sun. So that is good. Maybe we should also have something for cloudy, right? Because otherwise we're just going to get the same thing showing up. Oh, we do have cloudy, so that is wonderful. Let's actually map this on to the smaller cards too. So once again, let's just pass this on to the card. So I'm going to just pass through image here. And then we're going to get that day and pass it through into get image. So open that up. And if day exists, we're going to get the weather from it. So just that word, right? And it means that now on the card, we also need to pass that through as a prop. So passing through the day, let's pass through the image, and the image is essentially a string, and now we can use that image. So I'm going to do it on the image card. Let's remove all this and grab the image just like so, and now we should see that there. Wonderful. I'm so happy with this. This is looking so good. Just some final styling, okay? I'm going to scale this to fit, but I'm really happy with this. Maybe let's pad out the image first. So let's get back our apps. And then let's look in here, and then the image. Let's pad it out, right? So let's go to the padding. I'm going to say that I want to essentially, well, maybe let's just give this, let's get rid of the width. So I'm just going to do auto, and let's just set the height of this, right? I'm going to do 300, and that is going to be centered. So I'm happy with this. Maybe let's add a margin to the top. So let's unlock this, and on the top, I'm just going to put 20 to space it out a little bit. So I already think that is looking better. Let's have a look. Okay, so that is good. And then maybe on the card container as well. So just click on the card container. I'm just going to add some padding. So let's go ahead and find the padding or margin. It's up to you. Maybe we should do margin, unlock this, and let's go with 30. Okay, great. So I think this looks wonderful. I'm just going to scale it to fit. This is what it looks like. And then we can also zoom in a bit. So maybe zoom in. One last thing I'm going to do is just make this a bit bigger, as it doesn't seem to apply. We just applied 3, and there we go. And this is what the final thing does currently look like. I'm really happy with it. I hope you've enjoyed making this with me, and I hope you've learned how to now use a visual editor so you can really see what is going on. And of course, you can kind of cheat and use these. And at the end, you will have the code. So it's all here. If you then navigate to your computer, so for example, if I was to, let's go ahead and find it. So I'm going to use my Finder window and go into users, and then go into Anya Kubo, and then go into a folder called development. You will see React weather application here, and here are all the files, okay, from this IDE. It's exactly what we've been working with, right? Card, footer, header, main card, and nav. So wonderful. This is looking good. It's all in TypeScript and using SCSS. So you have a full project. You can now take this code, put it on GitHub. It's yours.